All right. Hello, guys. So I'm here to help you with guessing words. See, I've noticed that students, they struggle a lot with vocabulary, right? Especially when they do reading. And the interesting thing is that reading actually tests your vocabulary skills rather than comprehension, right? Many teachers, they say, no, they test reading comprehension and all this stuff. You have to understand the text. But think about it. How would you understand the text if you don't know the words, right? Then we have this category of people who always translate words, right? Translate words and rely on the translation. But sometimes you just encounter like phrases and words that you don't know, right? You've never heard of them, right? And the chances are you'll never hear of them in the future, right? You'll never ever use them in um your English, in your daily life, right? But they could be essential for getting the answer, right? And every answer means like every point that you get, every extra band. So you gotta be really, really careful with that. And again, other students, they just waste their time during the test. They actually translate the full text. And this is a really bad strategy, right? We don't do that. We don't do that here at Nova School. We don't translate text. We try to understand the meaning of the text rather than just the translation. So today I'm going to help you with the guessing unknown words from the context. So you rely basically on the context, right? And you try to not just translate words, but try to understand words, try to feel the words, right? Once you have this full understanding, not even full understanding, but once you have this, at least some sort of understanding of the word, you can easily nail any test. Trust me, be it reading IELTS, be it CAE reading, CPE reading, or even SAT, right? And other types of reading tests, because vocabulary is the key there, right? So let's see what kind of strategy we have. So basically we have lots of strategies, but now I'm going to talk about the most common, the most powerful techniques. So let's get started, right? So buckle up. All right. So the first strategy that I always teach my students is that you have to look at the surrounding words. It's basically look at the context, look at the words that go before the word, right? And after the word, right? And try to, well, understand the meaning of the context, right? So basically words directly before again or after the unknown word often contain hints, right? Подсказки, to help you figure out the meaning. And these hints come in different forms. For example, so what kind of types of hints do we have? We have definition hint, right? Or definition clues, right? When the word is basically explained in the sentence, right? And it's very, very common in English that they give like not a direct explanation, but they do give some sort of indirect or sometimes direct explanations, right? Or the word could go with a synonym or antonym, right? So it's very common. That's how English works, right? English is all about the patterns, right? So you're not giving when you say like this and that, so that should be similar to this, right? They should match. You cannot say I don't know, pencil and phone, right? You cannot say that. They have to match. They have to match more or less. This is how English works basically. But as for definition, look at this sentence. The organism is autotrophic. Autotrophic, meaning it produces its own food through photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. I'm not sure whether you guys studied biology, but photosynthesis is something from biology, something related um, to sun and greenies, to like all the stuff to plants, right? So eutrophic, meaning it what? Produce its own food, right? So the organism is making their own food. They're basically relying on themselves, right? They're not waiting for another thing to get them food or to get the food from that thing. They're just making or producing their own food, right? So autotrophic. Then there could be, as I said, synonyms or paraphrase. For example, the unknown word could be rephrased. The CEO was shrewd. Shrewd is a very good word, actually, in terms of personality. I mean, not good in the word, but it could be good in the word, by the way, but it's just a very good word to use to get a high score. So the CEO was shrewd, clever, and always one step ahead of the competition. So you see, shrewd is basically some sort of synonym of clever and some sort of synonym of the person who is always one step ahead, right? So you can say that's more or less a positive word, right? Now, antonyms or contrast clues. So when the opposite basically is used, right? The opposite word. For example, unlike. Unlike basically means not like, right? Unlike the loquacious professor. Loquacious professor. Do you think I know this word? No, I've never heard it, honestly. Before making this lesson, I've never ever heard of this word, and I'll probably never hear it later, right? Because this word is more or less useless. Um, but unlike this loquacious professor who never stopped talking, she preferred short and precise explanations. So we can say that the professor never stopped talking. So he was talkative or kind of chatty, right? Or probably talkative, right? He talked a lot. She preferred short and precise explanations. Perhaps, sorry, perhaps he gave um, long and boring explanations, right? So yeah, that's how you can guess it. So basically, my tip for you would be to watch out for single words like meaning, that is, in contrast, unlike, rather, such as, and look for the, well, definitions, synonyms, antonyms, or contrast, right? Or even examples, because examples can also help you to guess the meaning of the word, right? So the second strategy. The second strategy might sound really obvious, but that's what it is. Try to use your logic and common sense, right? So think like a detective. Even if you don't know the word, the context of the story can actually give you some sort of mental clues, right? It can help you to understand the meaning, right? And don't just dwell on the words, right? Don't just like overthink about the word, like, oh, an elevator, what's that? Elevator, oh my gosh, what's that? No, it's really bad. Don't do this, right? Don't overthink. Instead, think like a detective, right? You all know like Sherlock Holmes, so think like him. All right. So after running the marathon, so marathon running, right? When I think of marathon, I usually think of long distances, right? Like 10 kilometers probably, or tens of kilometers. So it's very harsh to basically run those marathons, right? So he was completely innervated and could barely stand. Could barely stand. So he couldn't stand, right? Yeah, he couldn't stand, perhaps because he was tired, right? So innervated, kind of tired or exhausted, right? Or even drained, like extremely tired. Then, when the child saw clown, she recoiled and began to cry. Clearly, she had a phobia of clowns. Perhaps most of you who are watching this are Russian speakers, so you would definitely know this phobia, more or less. But still, you see, like she saw the clown, right? Recoiled. Sorry for that. Um, I hadn't sleep actually. So yeah, she recoiled and began to cry. So it's basically she was kind of shocked and she started to weep, right? Began to cry, weeping, crying. So most likely she had some sort of fear or even intense fear, right? So yeah. And my tip for you would be always ask yourself, what would make sense here, right? What do they actually talk about? What's the main meaning of it, right? What is the context, right? Because the context is the key. Remember that. Okay. The third strategy, break the words into parts or morphology, right? English words are basically made of certain structures, just like Russian words or any other words in other languages. So they have prefixes, roots, and suffixes, right? And most of them have prefixes, roots, and suffixes. Sometimes they have prefix and root, or root and suffix, right? But they always have a root. So basically, these parts can have meanings that can give you really good clues, right? For example, the common prefixes could be on, meaning that not, like unjust, not just, right? Or unimportant, not important, right? Then miss, which is wrong, like misjudge, wrong judgely, or pre, which is before, like pre-hit, or pre-installed, right? Which is installed beforehand. For example, when you open your phone, when you buy your phone, right? When you buy Android phone, you usually get Facebook or Google, usually Google, pre-installed by default, right? You don't download it again. It's already here. I mean, it's already there on your phone. So yeah. Now, common roots could be dict, which is say, like predict, contradict, or diction, right? Then cred, which is belief, incredible, or credibility, right? Or being, which is good, like benefit, benevolent. Benevolent is a very good word. I mean, both figuratively and in terms of the level, because benevolent is kind, right? And that's a C1, C2 level word. Then common suffixes, full, full of something, like hopeful, joyful, usually goes with adjectives. Well, mostly goes with adjectives. Then less, which is without, hopeless, fearless, useless. And then shin, right? Action or result, like completion, instruction, and so on and so forth, right? So there's lots of roots and suffixes and prefixes. You know, I would say that you have to read a lot. Read a lot of books or articles, everything that interests you, right? Read that and try to highlight the patterns, because English is very patterned language, right? You can track the patterns and you can learn from those patterns, right? And this is basically patterns, right, that you can learn. And so the example could be here, her speech was incoherent. In, that's another basically prefix for not. So cohere, right? That's basically sticking together, right? Coherence. I think in speaking and writing, they have this criteria, coherence, right? That your words should stick together, they should go together. But her speech was incoherent, right? ENT. ENT we usually use for adjectives. So that's basically an adjective. So your speech was incoherent, that nobody could follow her ideas. Nobody could follow her ideas. Perhaps you could say, well, here's incoherent, it's some kind of negative word because it starts with in. And then you can think, oh, no one could understand her. So incoherent would probably mean that her speech was hard or difficult to understand. You could get it? Good. Okay, so that was the third one. Now let's move to the fourth. So sometimes you cannot just guess based on one sentence, based on one single sentence. It's not enough, right? You need to read an entire paragraph to collect more context to understand it fully. For example, the magician explanation sounded specious. It seemed logical at first, but after thinking more carefully, the audience realized it was misleading and fake. So what was it, right? It refers to explanation, right? And this explanation was what? Misleading and fake. Even if you don't know what is misleading, you can guess it based on the word fake. So misleading means wrong, fake, right? And this explanation sounded fake, right? Not true. Kind of. Then she told a heart-wrenching story of loss. Heart-wrenching story of loss. So she probably lost someone, right? Causing many in the audience to wipe their tears. So tears, right? Cry. Even the judge had to pause to regain composure. So that probably was in the courtroom, and that was emotional because tears, right? And the judge had to stop this process to basically to calm himself or herself down, right? So heart-wrenching story most likely would be like something related to heart, something which is sad, something which is really emotional, and like really emotionally sad or emotionally painful, right? So yeah, this is how we guess based on the context, right? So think of a paragraph like a puzzle. Every sentence adds a new piece all the time. Then, using background knowledge, that our fifth strategy, basically. So what does it mean? Use things that you guys already know about the world to make smart guesses, to make educated guesses, right? For example, they wore traditional garments for the pilgrimage to Mecca. So you most likely guys know it's Mecca. Mecca, that's a holy place of worship for Muslims, right? So that means we have this religious context, right? So pilgrimage, like they wear traditional garments for the pilgrimage to Mecca. So to Mecca, that means they're moving to the place, right? So movement, or better say journey, religious journey, because well, we talk about religious context, right? And some people would say, what is garment, right? Garment, so they wore. Wore, that's a past simple of, I mean, that's a past participle. Was it actually past participle? No, it's not past participle, but it's a past verb, right? It's a past verb of word wear, which basically refers to that they were some kind of cloth, right? Then the crops were destroyed by the locust. Destroyed by locust, so some kind of disaster, right? Or some kind of animal or insect, right? Because we're talking about crops. And the farmers had no choice but to leave their land. So locust must be something bad, something harmful, right? Because insects, well, basically locusts are those like insects that destroy plants, right? Because we talk about crops, and usually crops are destroyed by insects. So yeah, just trust your experience and common world knowledge. That may actually help you a lot. All right, then this one is very important. Connotation, right? Connotation is like a emotional um, emotional state of the word, because the words can be positive, can be negative, or neutral, right? So let's say when we think of the word economical, it's usually a positive word, like on ekonomiczny, right? Economic thing. But when I think of the word chip, like this person is chip, you know, there's some жмот, right? It's like stingy person, bad. So it's a very bad connotation, right? But the words are more or less the same. The meaning is the same. They don't spend money. But the one is very negative, the other one is very positive. Think about it. So let's look at these examples. So he gave a magnanimous response, forgiving the man who insulted him. So forgiveness. So прощение, right? The man who insulted him. So it's some sort of positive because the person forgave this man, right? So we can assume that it's a generous response or some kind of noble response, right? Щедрый ответ. Sorry. Then her caustic remarks like corrections, left everyone in the room silent. People are not speaking and uncomfortable. Very bad, very negative. So we can say that those corrections were harsh or biting, right? Not good corrections. Perhaps good, but not emotionally positive corrections. Then she remained aloof during the discussion, not showing any interest or emotion. Not showing any interest or emotion. So when you don't show interest or emotion, you just sit with a poker face, right? Like very neutral emotion. You don't show anything. So aloof means you're kind of emotionally distant. You're neutral. You see? Okay. So always check those like emotional signals in the sentence, right? Because that's very, very important. Okay. Now let's go to 7. Use collocations or words that usually go together. This one is this skill can be built from reading. When you read a lot and when you actually learn not just single words, but phrases. You have to learn phrases, not words. That could help you not just with your reading comprehension, but that could also help you with your speaking, right? And with writing, right? And even with listening, right? So it was all 4 sections basically. So some words usually go together, right? And these fixed combinations can guide your guessing. For example, the word blatant lie, the phrase. But what does it mean by blatant? Blatant is something obvious, something shameless, right? Would you guess it? Not really. We don't have a context here, so I don't think, but if we had a context, perhaps you would guess it, but here you would definitely not guess it because we don't have a context. But even if we had, sometimes people, they just don't understand that. That's why I always tell my students that we have to learn phrases rather than single words, okay? Then, severely compromised health. So severely something harsh. Compromised, kind of damaged, weakened health, right? Weak health. Then, render obsolete. Obsolete. So no longer useful. We don't need that. Or this one, take umbrage at the comment. Umbrage. So the comment was somehow offensive. That's why you take umbrage. You take an offense. You get sad, right? So again, like when you read books, articles, or other stuff, always look for familiar combinations, especially with verbs and adjectives, or verbs or adjectives, like noun verb, verb noun, or noun verb, or adjective noun, right? Those are very, very common combinations. 8, grammatical signals, part of speech, okay? So knowing whether the word is noun, verb, or adjective, or actually adverb, helps you guess its function and meaning, right? Like always ask yourself, is this word a verb, adjective, or noun? Is this word doing something, performing action, then it's verb. If this word is describing something, okay, then it's more likely to be adjective. If this word is naming something, so most likely it's to be noun, right? So let's look at the examples. Her candor was appreciated by the committee, who valued honest feedback. Honest feedback. So I think candor is something related to honesty, right? So you see, this is a noun, right? Like you ask yourself, what's that? Adjective, verb, or noun? And based on the sentence breakdown, we can say that it's definitely noun, right? So yeah, and basically honest feedback, like honesty. So we can say that candor is some sort of honesty, right? Chestnut, right? It was a chestnut. I think it was chestnut. So he responded with a laconic nod, doing this way, it's nodding, and walked away, right? So he responded with that and walked away. So laconic, what's that? Adjective, verb, noun, adverb. So it is an adjective, right? Because that's an adjective that describes response, right? And it's not. Not, it's like short, very short or minimal, and you just note it and then you go, right? Very obvious. Then the artist juxtaposed realism and abstraction in his painting. So basically, realism is one thing, it's like black, and abstraction is white, two opposites, right? And juxtapose, you see the artist subject, so juxtapose, then it's verb, right? And realism and abstraction is basically the object we have here. So juxtapose is the verb that means place side by side for contrast. Like we have realism and abstractions, two opposites, like black and white, but you put it side by side, right? To basically show the contrast. So yeah. Okay. Always again, think about it. Is it verb, adjective, noun, adverb, and try to break down the sentence, right? Try to find part of the speech. Then watch for discourse markers. Discourse markers, signal words, right? Discourse markers are signal words. Basically, what's that? These words guide you through the sentence logic, right? It's all about the how you stick your sentences, how you stick the ideas, right? And they can show you contrast, cause and effect, examples, summaries, restatement, and lots of stuff, right? So common signal words could be, if you talk about contrast, however, or but, or although, unlike, whereas, right? Contrast, black and white. Cause and effect, like one causes another thing, like therefore, or because, very common, or as a result, another common cause and effect discourse marker. Then we have examples like such as naming, for example, including, right? Or a statement. In other words, that is to say, or rather, right? Like we have different, like lots of signal words or those discourse markers. And it would be really good to revise all the discourse markers before your exam, right? And practice making sentences, not just one sentence with that, but practice writing short paragraphs, right? Get the idea and write a short paragraph using the discourse markers. But again, don't overuse them. It's really bad to overuse them. Okay, so he seemed amiable. However, his acerbic comments shocked everyone. So, however, shows the contrast here, right? He seemed kind of good, friendly, but his acerbic comments, again, his very harsh comments, right? We had this similar word here. Where was that? With the comments. Yeah, caustic remarks. So I believe, I don't use those words, right? I don't use those words in my daily language, but I believe that these two words are actually synonyms. We can Google them later. So acerbic comments shocked everyone. And based on however, we can say that it's something bad, something like contrasting, right? Or this one. The plant is resilient. Resilient is a very common word in IELTS and just in daily life English. So the plant is resilient, meaning, again, meaning that's our discourse marker that shows definition, right? Remember the first strategy. So the plant is resilient. It can survive extreme conditions like drought and frost. So basically, we have the definition, right? Definition clue. And this half of the sentence, I mean, this part of the sentence, not even half, it's like 80% of the sentence describe the word resilient. So easy. So you see, these little words change the whole meaning of the sentence, and they can actually help you guess the meaning, right? And understand that. But sometimes, even after using all that, you just don't understand it, and you just can't find the right guess. That's why we have strategy 10. Make an educated guess and move on, right? Even after using all clues, some words will still be unclear. And that's okay. That's okay. It's totally normal, right? You often don't need the exact meaning to understand the overall message. Try to understand like the overall meaning of the paragraph or of the article and move on, right? Never ever dwell on words, right? То есть не засиживаемся на словах. It's bad, right? It's really bad because once you start dwelling on words, right? Once you've stopped, you'll overthink. Once you start overthinking, you'll start doubting your skills. Once you start doubting your skills, this basically leads to chaos in your mind, and then you just fail the test. So we don't want that. We don't want that, right? Okay, so let's see some examples. The ritual, again, something religious stuff, was led like leader by a hierophant. I have no idea what the word is. But again, my guess is that's some sort of religious figure or some kind of leader, right? So yeah, we don't care about that. Let's just move on, right? Then her comments was filled with sardonic humor, making the others laugh and wince at the same time. So sardonic humor. I believe it's something sarcastic or some kind of bitter humor. And then we continue reading, right? Always move on. Never overthink about the meaning, right? Try to make a guess, move on. It's okay. So focus on understanding the main idea, not every single word. That is the key, right? But again, the more words you know, the better is for you, the better is your level, the higher is your level, and the higher score you get. So don't stop learning words, learn the words, always learn, have the small notepads, right? Write down the words, practice them, practice different sentence structures using the new words. And whenever you notice the words in the sentences, right, in articles, books, whatever, highlight them and revise the word, right? By doing so, you can easily learn the words and phrases, right? Which can definitely help you to get higher score in IELTS, regardless of whatever you do, reading, listening, writing, or speaking, right? But if you don't know, if you really don't know the word, don't panic. It's okay. Use these strategies, right? Practice the strategies before the test, right? So that during the test, you will just use them automatically without even thinking which one is to use. And during the test, basically use the strategies, try to make an educated guess, try to do your best, right? Do not overthink about it. Make an educated guess and move on, right? You're gonna do great. So I talk to you later. Have a good day. See you soon. Bye-bye.